Are you feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or just in need of some deep relaxation? Step into the peaceful sanctuary of the Crystal Grotto at Painshill Park in Surrey and enjoy a crystal sound bath brought to you by Wisdom on Wellness. A unique and immersive experience designed to restore balance to your mind, body, and spirit. Relax and let the soothing vibrations wash over you, helping you to unwind, release tension, and find that inner calm. Whether you're new to sound healing or if they're a regular part of your practice, these sound baths in the grotto are an unforgettable way to reconnect with yourself. And for those who want a more personal experience, we also offer one-on-one sessions tailored to your specific needs. Join us for an hour of deep relaxation and rejuvenation, and trust me, you'll walk away feeling lighter, more centered, and ready to face the world. Book your spot now for Monday the 23rd of September at wisdomonwellness.co.uk. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Wow Talks podcast. It has been a while, hasn't it? Alex and I have been keeping rather busy with lots of exciting new projects and things at Wow, and I am going to give you a little rundown on what's been happening with all things Wow before we dive into this episode. So if you haven't heard already, we have got the London Gem and Mineral Show that is returning this November, and we're going to have the Opal Whisperers from the Discovery Channel are also coming back all the way from down under, mate. So if you love all things crystals, you will not want to miss this exhibition in November. We have also been running crystal sound baths as well. I've recently become a sound therapist, and we've been having sound baths in the Crystal Grotto at Painshill, which is just the most magical environment ever. We first brought the sound baths to the grotto in 2022 when we had our first ever Wow Fest there, just so you know. So it's been a really kind of magical, special, full circle moment to be able to hold these sound baths ourselves, myself, in the grotto. So yeah, we still have some tickets left for the 23rd of September is our final date for now before we get our hands on a few more, but head to our website for tickets to that one-of-a-kind experience. You will not want to miss this if you're a fan of holistic healing and sound baths, especially in the grotto. It is super magical. And another super exciting project that we've just launched is Wow Tours London, and this is in collaboration with the brilliant Gemma Petherbridge and the Crystal Mystery School, and these are spiritual walking tours around London. So if you want to discover mystical and esoteric secrets that London holds, then you might want to head on to our website to book a slot on one of our Wow tours as well. Yeah, we've been busy. There's been lots going on. So for those who have been waiting very patiently, we are now finally bringing you the talks that were recorded live at the Wisdom on Wellness Festival at West Horsley Place this July. Now, this episode, our fabulous host, Sarah Lamptey, sits down with Lauren White for a really inspiring chat all about addiction to authenticity. So in this chat, Lauren shares her deeply personal story of addiction at a young age, how she found her way to sobriety, and how she's now helping others to embrace their true and authentic selves. So get ready to be inspired and empowered to make positive changes in your own life. Get comfy and let's dive in. We hope you enjoy.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. Feel free to come a bit closer if you'd like to take a seat on the cushions. But it's so good to talk to you. Where do we find you right now, right in this moment?
Oh God, you know what? This reminds me of check-ins that I used to do when I was in rehab, basically, where I used to actually just sit down and kind of just really ask myself how I'm feeling, which is something that we don't do in today's society. We're always from A to B, rushing around, doing so much, especially in the city. I feel a little bit agitated. I was just saying to you that I had a bit of bad news about my friend last night. Unfortunately, he took an overdose, which is really kind of shocking for me. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because this is also why I do what I do, right? And I help people battle addiction. I help people get sober. I help inspire people for change. So from hearing that news, there was a reason why I'm here today. But there's always going to be an up, right? There's always going to be a reason why things happen. And I just need to accept it and move on and just, be here just to help other people.
Yeah, and thank you for being here with everything that's gone on. So we are going to talk a bit about what happened at the beginning, and it feels like the beginning because even though so much has happened up until the point where you were 18, you were still so young. Can you pinpoint where you think the substance abuse started?
So if for people that don't know, I'm 31 years old. I battled addiction at a young age. I got sober at 18 for mainly drugs and alcohol, eating disorders as well. Had my own thing with eating disorders. And I saw no way out from my childhood. I came from a very good family, had everything I wanted growing up on the outside, but I always felt less than. I always felt pressure. I always felt like I didn't fit in. And I always put so much expectation on myself. And through that, I kind of, picked up substances or picked up coping mechanisms to deal with that stuff. And it wasn't until I realised that it was a progressive illness that it got really worse. It was from the age of 12 where I picked up my first alcohol beverage. And then at 14, I was doing drugs that I'd said I'd never do. And then obviously at 18, I literally I couldn't stop drinking or being bulimic or acting out. And like the last speaker spoke about, you don't know how to get out because it's a cycle. And the cycle is a subconscious one that at the beginning is conscious, but then it becomes subconscious to the point where we cannot stop. And the amount of times I'd wake up and I'd say to myself, never again. I'm never doing this again. I hate this so much. And then click, when something happened, emotion, feelings, I went back straight to it. And it wasn't until I had a complete psychic change, a complete rewiring of who I am as a person and looking at my environment, looking at my behaviors, that I started to actually really kind of do this whole thing around I deserve to get better. And I had to hit my rock bottom. So, 18 was my rock bottom. I did have specific traumas in my life that I went through that really affected me. At the ages of 12, I saw my mum go through breast cancer, which really subconsciously made me feel a lot of the feelings. By the age of 15, I saw one of my family members go into rehab for alcohol addiction. And then by 18, my younger brother had cancer. And these were just traumatic experiences in my life that I had this negative association that something bad was always going to happen. And I don't know if anyone relates to that, because the more I had that negative association with something bad happening, the more I kind of convinced myself, well, why would I live anyway? And I do believe now, and which I do with a lot of my clients, is rewiring the way that we think. I wake up every day, and if I tell myself I'm not good enough, I change that. I tell myself I am good enough. And I catch myself on a daily basis, putting myself down. And I catch myself and I go, no, Lauren, you do not speak to yourself this way. And it all stems from two things: self-esteem and self-worth. When I was in addiction, what did I have? I had low self-esteem and low self-worth. When I got sober and changed my life around, what did I have? I grew my self-esteem and my self-worth. And the only way I do that is by doing things that actually truly mean to me, give me purpose, give me drive, and that actually, make me feel like I have of something. So I always say to everyone, find your purpose, whatever it is. Mine speaking. So.
And helping people, and you're so brilliant at both. And I think, just thinking about that age, the boundaries of what's normal, I think is quite interesting. I think it's so easy, and I've certainly had points in my life where, for one group of friends, what was actually normal was just, maybe having, a drink on a Friday night, and then there were other group of friends where it was like, oh, we'll have one drink a day, and that's sort of what's normal. And actually, it's very easy, I think, in those formative years, and certainly when you're going through so much pain and so much change, which is what you were, to sort of navigate that. And at some point it becomes unmanageable, basically, and out of control. So, and you realise that at 18. How did you realise that at 18?
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying I'm really passionate talking about. I wasn't a whiskey drinker on a park bench. I wasn't a heroin addict to the side of the street. I share this quite a lot, but obviously, like when I first got sober, I started working with the Amy Winehouse Foundation, going into schools and doing talks. And the kids would look at me and they'd be like, what do you mean you're not an alcoholic? Because I'd come in like in a gym gear and I was 18 years old. And this is what I mean by never judge a book by its cover. You never know what someone is going through. And I turned around to these kids and I was like, yeah, like I really struggled with alcohol and I struggled with bulimia. I struggled with all of this stuff. And what I'm going to is like, you know, for me, I justified it in so many ways. And I knew that I was 18. And in my screwed up head, I thought I had so many more years of drinking until I stopped, because I wasn't that bad. Could have got worse. You know, I wasn't dying, wasn't losing anything. But I was very lucky in what I had went through, because I had 2 family members that were sober. And I'm not saying that is not why people get sober, but I was able to look at alcohol and drugs and food as not just, oh, okay, I'm not that bad, I'll carry on. I saw it as how it could get. And I saw people changing their lives around and getting sober. And when I saw people getting sober around me, they were the happy ones. They were the free ones. I was the one that hated myself so much, couldn't look at myself in the mirror, felt shame and guilt, was affecting my relationships, affecting my, my work. That was how it took me. And I just remember when I was 18, there was this switch for me. But one day I just broke down. And I broke down to my mum's best friend who was sober. And I said, I cannot do this anymore. Because it was a cycle that was like so horrific. And like the last guy had said in the last interview, I never wanted to kill myself, but because I was in such dire, desperate help, I didn't have a way out. So in that moment, there were so many times I was like, I might as well just kill myself, because I just saw no way out until I actually surrendered. And I always say to people, there's nothing wrong with saying there's a problem. There is nothing wrong with saying that you're sad. There's no shame around having a bad day. That is what makes us human. And within my recovery, I'm telling you now, it's not been roses. And I've had to take myself 10 steps back, 10 steps forward, 10 steps back. But what I have done is I've turned it around and gone, it doesn't have to be a bad life. It's just a bad day. And that's what's helped me.
And then what was that period like at rehab?
It was interesting. I mean, you think that like it's on the TV and like Eminem kind of goes in, he does this thing, and you're like in meetings and stuff like that. Like, it's not a normal childhood. I didn't even think I had a normal childhood going into rehab at 18 years old. Being sober at 18 is probably the most unnormal thing I've ever heard of. I did a talk the other night, and I did a Sober Curious talk in front of about 100 people, and a lot of these people are now becoming sober and sober curious, becoming more aware of what they're putting in their body. But for me, when I was 18, like, I was weird. I was the weird person to get sober. But it was the first time in my life that I was able to go somewhere and actually breathe. I was able to go somewhere and be able to talk about my feelings, be able to identify with other people, be able to get rid of the shame and the guilt I had, be able to cry. I still find it hard to cry. I still find it hard sometimes to feel my feelings, because I'm like, just deal with it. Just like, just get on with it. We have this thing innate in us that's like, just move on. I learned how to process there. And it was very eye-opening for me, because it brought me down to earth. And the one thing that I would honestly get honest about with my addiction was that it gave me a lot of ego and pride. It made me a very, very, very angry person. And it also made me think I was the most superhuman person ever, until I realized that I was this little child that just wanted love. I could never ask for love. I couldn't look at anyone in the eye. I couldn't, ask for help. And I had to rewire and learn these things. I don't think anyone should just rock up in rehab, but I do think group therapy is the most amazing thing. I think support groups are incredible. And I think putting yourself in a safe space to be able to just let go is one of the most freeing things I've ever personally done in my life. So I generally feel not everyone should go into rehab, but I'm actually feel blessed that I had the experience to be able to go somewhere for 4 months and just be me.
And then after those 4 months, how did you sort of go back into the world, I suppose? And
That was hard.
what was that like? And also, I wanted to ask about your friendship circles as well.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was really hard. I think the easiest part is going into rehab and taking yourself away from the environment, right? And a lot of the environment is actually the stuff that I was very susceptible using. I was modeling at a young age. That really affected me, developed me eating disorders. I was working in clubs, which I thought was really cool because I was surrounded by the coolest people. Yet again, feeding my ego. And I tried to be someone that I wasn't. I talk about this very highly around the fact that like I was deep down a tomboy and I tried to be this girly girl wearing dresses all the time because it was all a mirage, all a facade to put on because I was so scared to be accepted. And then you go back into rehab and you rebuild yourself and you ask yourself all these questions of who I am and then go back to your inner child and go back to that little Lauren. And then you come out and you're like, you go back to that. You're scared, you're like, I'm going to be accepted. And I really, really had to like just retrain myself. I really put myself centered into AA, which was something that was my decision, doing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and going to meetings and being around sober people. I'm not saying it works for everyone. I'm saying you need to go and figure out whatever your therapy is. Over years, 12 steps therapy saved my life, but then I had to have trauma therapy, CBT, DBT, all of this stuff. But for me, it was about my support system. So I did have to take myself away from specific people that weren't serving me. I had to stop modeling for the time being because actually it was affecting my eating disorder. That was me personally. I was just very sensitive towards it. I had to learn how to slow down. I had to learn how to take a step back. I had to I'm trying to think of what it was like because it was 11 years ago. I had to really kind of like just, start to do things that were good for me. So I got really into fitness. I got really into running, really helped me. And journaling really helped as well. But it wasn't easy. And there were some days where I struggled. And I am very honest about recovery in the sense of like, just because you get sober doesn't mean your life's going to be amazing. And I've had to really deal with my problems head on rather than picking up drinking, drugs or food to manage and cope. And for me, it's really about asking myself questions and checking in with myself around, do I want to do this? Is this something that's going to really make me happy or affect me? And when we spoke about what the topic is, it's about becoming your authentic self. And I really started to do that by really asking myself those questions of who Lauren is. So I actually stopped doing the clubbing and the partying and the events and all that stuff and all of those things that actually gave me ego and went back into myself and just went back to like the easy, slow it down and take it time type of thing.
Brilliant. You say that to begin to recover, you need to just believe you deserve to live a life of freedom from pain. What advice do you give to people when it comes to pushing back that inner voice? Because you're talking about that's, often we tell ourselves this narrative of what we're worth or what we're not worth. So yeah, how do we start with that?
Yeah, it's really hard because our thinking is so screwed up where I can wake up and I can walk into a room and I can think every single person hates me. I can think that this boy doesn't like me because he hasn't replied to my text, or I can replay a situation in my head over and over again because I'm a huge overthinker, and come up with scenarios that aren't even real. I don't know if anyone relates to that, but that is how our brain works. It's wild. And the more we affirm those things, the more we convince ourselves it's true. And we can, the amount of times I've made myself go crazy. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I could have a situation where something happens and then I can literally fast forward and think, oh my God, I'm going to die. That's literally how our mind goes. The one thing that I always talk about is DBT, which is a type of therapy that I really worked on, which is around mindfulness and being in the present moment. and checking the facts. And those are three things that I really do when it comes to our inner critic and our thoughts. Is it a fact? With my eating disorder, I used to go look in the mirror and think I was fat all the time. And when I tell myself I'm fat, I'm affirming it for myself, but then what I do is I check the fact. Has anyone told me I'm fat? No. So I go by that. And that was a really, really good tool that I learned in DBT, which is something that I do all the time now, when it comes to certain situations with my head. And then another one is going back to mindfulness and breath work and going back to grounding, being in the present moment. I don't know what the hell my future is going to be. I don't know if tomorrow is going to be a bad day. But all I do have is now. And when you bring life into perspective and you ground ourselves in the present moment by doing all these tools like breath work, mindfulness, meditation, like sometimes, walking. And I talk a lot about five senses: smelling, touching, just tasting. Slow it down. We can bring ourselves back into the present moment. Mel Robbins has this thing called the 5-second rule, and it really helps you with anxiety and bring yourself back in the present moment if you wanted to Google that. But these little tools really help me with my inner critic, because it can come up as many times, but the more I affirm myself in a positive way, the more I'm going to believe myself in positive things. And actually, I'm not woo-woo, but I promise you now, positive things happen. Like, just a prime example, I left my full-time job last year. I was in somewhere for 5 years, got to a point where I was too high up in the company. It was like, that was it. And then went to another company and it just didn't work out and I left. And I hit 30 and I was just like, I don't want to live my life like this anymore. And I quit my job and moved to Bali. So I actually live in Bali, guys, by the way. And I convinced myself, whether or not this was going to fail, that I was going to do it anyway. And 6 months later, it was beyond the wildest dream that I've ever had. And I'm now doing the most incredible things that I've ever done. And it's not because I am any special to anyone else. It's because I've just believed myself that I'm going to do it.
How did you end up moving to Bali?
I was there last April and I lived in Hong Kong when I was 21, went to Bali when I was 21, fell in love with that place. What I identify with Bali, which is I bring a lot of Bali to London, is the slower pace of life, which is the nature, the environment, not putting so much pressure on myself to try and fit in and be someone that I'm not, because I was so scared to fail in life. And we all talk about failure, right? We all talk about going on Instagram and seeing the next person get married and get engaged, or this person's doing more than us. And we can compare ourselves in so many different avenues because we do live in a city that is very fast paced. We do have to always be on the go. And I went to Bali, and I'm not saying everyone should move to Bali, but I didn't have to try to be anyone. There was no element of status there. And there was just like, people were just happy just getting on their bike and going to the beach. And I realized in my life that's what I needed. But it's more about incorporating those tools here that I really, really promote.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really brilliant Simon Armitage poem that talks about the feeling that you could get while looking at the stones of the Taj Mahal glinting, but you could actually get the same feeling skimming a stone across a pool of water in Hull, and I'm probably totally paraphrase that really badly, but it's something like that. And it's always stuck with me. It's always stuck with me because, yeah, you don't want to feel like you have to go across. If you can, beautiful, and if it works, wonderful. But yeah, how to sort of integrate that sense of peace wherever you are.
I mean, I still come home and I'm still in London, right? So like, I've always found London very difficult, like for me anyway, because I find it very overwhelming.
Did you grow up in London?
I grew up in Hertfordshire. And I grew up in a quiet area, but I grew up in a family of expectation, I think. And I love my family to bits, but like I went to private school, and that private school, I was expected to get good grades, and I was expected to go to university. Everyone was talking about good universities, and I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia when I was 12. I never got the grades. So whether or not someone tells me I'm not good enough, I innately believed I was not good enough because of those grades. So even from the age of 12, I generally had this innate belief that I was going to fail. And that always fed into me, you know? So I do talk a lot about failure. And I also talk a lot about failure being our successes. And when I did this talk on Thursday, I spoke about someone came up to me and was like, "You're killing it, Lauren." And I was like, "You may think that I'm killing it, yeah, but I have got rejected so many times." And it wasn't until I realized that the rejection is just redirection. The rejection for me, until I realized, is actually me pushing to get to the place where I'm meant to be. And it makes you resilient as a human. So anyone that tells you that they've figured out in life and they're perfect and they don't ever get rejected, it's not true. The reason why people think I'm killing it is because I just keep going. I mean, I'm not killing it, by the way. I don't even know what I'm doing. But yeah,
definitely
you know what I mean.
I wanted to ask about your private school. Do you look back on it as a positive experience and a positive environment?
God. I don't know. Do I?
Was it high? Did you feel it was
it was
too much
high
pressure? Too much?
So much pressure. They used to do these things called discipline points. And I used to be like, "You got a discipline point," and I was terrified of my teachers. It was intense. And a lot of the girls that I was in school with were like going to all these massive A-class schools like Channing and all these big massive schools, and there was me who just like really struggled. I remember like getting 0 in everything, but also I had nothing to compare to because I've never been to a state school, because I went to a private junior school and then I went to a private secondary school. But I don't know, I guess, yeah, I don't really know any different.
Yeah.
So I can't really.
When I was just thinking about, you talked about ADHD and that was
Yes.
at 12. Did you feel you supported at that time?
I did get support. And what I love about ADHD is that, yeah, again, back in my sobriety days, no one spoke about it. And I mean, I got put on Ritalin when I was 12, which I don't think at the time was very good. Because Ritalin actually in itself is not a drug that helps you. It made me a zombie. It made me, you know, starve myself and not eat. Don't recommend anyone go on Ritalin. But I did get help at school. I was very lucky to have extracurricular and extra help with it. But I think when you get told at the age of 12 that you have this thing that's neurodivergent, that's different, yet again, whether or not anyone tells you you're different, you start to believe you're different. And that was it for me. I think that I did have a very different brain. And a lot of people don't understand me even now. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing or a good thing, but like I'm wired very differently. I can wake up and do 15 million things at once. And work has always been very hard for me because people just are like, "You're too fast." And then I can crash. So as years have gone on, I've really had to learn a lot about my ADHD diagnosis. There is a very, very huge link with addiction and ADHD, if people don't know. And for people that really struggle with overthinking thoughts and racing brain, they're more likely going to turn to substances to try and quieten down that brain. But the one thing that I would highly recommend is don't leave it if you do think you have it, because learning more about your mind and learning more about the things that you have has really, really helped me. And actually accept myself for who I am. Like I did a talk with the Sober Girl Society, which is a huge sober community that this girl called Millie Gooch has done. And I did a talk around ADHD and neurodivergency, and it's becoming very common now around neurodivergency and people getting diagnosed with ADHD, and people becoming more aware and more open about it, but also people accepting themselves. And that's amazing. I absolutely love it.
I was just about to ask you actually what your proudest moment is, because you've done so much. Your proudest achievement in recent years?
I went to the House of Parliament in December. I think that was really cool. I became an ambassador for alcohol change and the Amy Winehouse Foundation, obviously. But yeah, going to the House of Parliament was really cool. I did a talk last year with Ollie Ollerton from SAS, Who Dares Wins. I do think that traveling has been amazing for me. So like I've done talks for loads of schools, brands, companies, and then doing it in Hong Kong. I recently did a talk on a retreat in Bali. I'm doing another talk in Bali. I guess for me, the more I do these talks and help people, that for me is a win. And, you know, gaining clients that I'm working with one-on-one, them turning around to me and saying to me, you've changed my life. Like, I mean, I've never been money orientated. I sometimes wish I was, but I generally think I'm successful and just by inspiring people. So I think that's my win.
That's a huge win. And I think actually we've come to the end of the time with you, but it was what an amazing,
thank you so much,
amazing
guys,
woman. Thank you for sharing your story
Thank
with
you.
us and for being at Wisdom and Wellness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our Wow Talks podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And we'd love for you to share your own wisdom on wellness. Join the conversation, share this episode with a friend, or follow us on social media for more updates at Wisdom on Wellness. Until next time.